Welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Baseball. We've got Disco Neil Walker on the show today. Let's do it. Silly, huh? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin' Baseball. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. My name is Jimmy. I got Jake with me. I got Trev with me. We just wrapped up a late night conversation with Neil Walker of your Philadelphia Phillies, Pittsburgh Pirates, Mets, half a season with the Brewers and the Yankees and the Marlins. He's been around, huh? Trev, you guys go way back. There's some good stories. One particularly funny story that I don't want to spoil for the people that are about to hear it, but you guys go back to you're like 17 years old. It's crazy.
Yeah, Neil and I, same draft class, so when you're kind of in that, I don't know, upper echelon, I guess that's the right word, of guys in that draft, you kind of start to see each other a bit. And yeah, we had a run in early on, but Neil's always been one of my favorite guys to watch. I think Jake, hit it perfectly describing him. Professional at bats, going to give you a professional defensive display, but he does have a little bit of swag with him, man. Like, he's got that confidence that you need, and that's why he's been able to stick around. He mentioned he's 6 days away from 10 years, and that's like the gold mark, man. If you get to 10 years, that is something.
Just sitting on that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that players really have those milestones in their head, and you hear him say he's going to celebrate that, and that's pretty cool. Jake, let me start that over because I was going to spoil something. Jake, what you got?
Neil is endeared to me. He's endeared to a little bit of whatever this career of mine has now turned into, and maybe some Talkin' Baseball fans will be welcome to that in the end. But he was great, man. Just a pro's pro, all that stuff. But I'm picturing if I was a GM and you're looking for dudes to put on your team, I'm trying to find an argument against that guy. Anything you'd want from a veteran presence, he was, and he's like a good times, a little for the boys at the end.
For the boys.
You got a little Nick Swisher laugh to him.
Ooh.
He's very happy guy.
I could see that.
Good energy.
Yeah. All right, let's throw it right to that. Here you go, Neil Walker.
We are joined during a special late night edition of Talkin' Baseball, we are joined by Neil Walker. Neil, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you guys for having me on. This is fun.
Where are you coming to us from?
Yeah, I'm coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Still partially quarantined up here. Enjoying as much family time as you can. I got a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old up in the house. I've done more changing of diapers and breakfast making for little kids and taken more tongue lashings from little kids than I would have liked to, but
the 4-year-olds, the 4-year-old age is when they start to reason and they can start to tell you things. You're like, wow, you're actually kind of making sense, but shut your mouth because I'm your dad.
Yeah, right. No, I lose every battle in my house.
I love it, man.
We've been talking to a lot of players throughout quarantine, and for a lot, I just love asking the question, what's it like to have a free summer? Because your whole life, your summers have been baseball. Are you finding yourself wow, it's nice out at night?
Yeah, when it hit me, it was what was that? Was it Memorial Day? That was a couple weeks ago, and people were like, "Oh, what are you doing for Memorial Day?" And I was like, "Memorial Day? I haven't had a Memorial Day in 20 years. What are you talking about?" But on the same token, I was very fortunate because I, at least when I was playing for the Pirates, we still live in somewhat the same area that I played in. So that was every once in a while on a Sunday, you'd get to go have a family get together or something like that. So the summers weren't completely you're stuck in a Manhattan apartment or, that was after I left Pittsburgh. But I was driving downtown in downtown Pittsburgh the other day, and I remember I was driving home and I was like, wait a second, this is not, it's 5:00 on a Wednesday afternoon and I'm driving down the highway. This is not normal, but fingers crossed that this thing will kick off anytime in the near future. So
yeah, well, don't hold your breath because it seems like every time we get our hopes up, man, something else goes on. But We're definitely excited to watch you play some baseball this year. We saw you in spring training.
Yep.
Which was
we didn't
cool.
get a chance to catch up, but that was fun to see you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a big meeting that day. We were waiting to talk to everyone. You guys had a big long
That's
meeting.
right.
How did that go? How was Philly? How were the guys? I know a lot of them, so I'm pretty familiar. But how was that adjustment like for you?
Yeah, it was good. It was the last couple years. And you felt it too, as veteran guys that aren't necessarily considered elite in their 30s. Like, you just grind, man. You try to do what you can do to help the team. You try what you can do to be an asset for the team. But like, you know how it is. It's about the young guys now. It's about if you're making a little bit more than the league minimum, you better be outplaying your contract exorbitantly. And so at this point in my career, I got 6 days to get to 10 years of service time.
Ooh.
So
that's awesome.
More than anybody, I'm hoping this thing gets kicked back off, because you never know. You you never know what next year holds or what the following year holds. But I've been super fortunate to this point in my career. So, but spring training was great in Philadelphia. Joe Girardi coming in, some of the guys that were already there, bringing in Zach Wheeler, Didi Gregorius.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, I played with some Pirate guys, McCutcheon and Josh Harrison and Francisco Liriano. So there was a lot of familiarity. And like we were talking about before we got on, baseball's a fraternity. So it's like, usually half the guys. If you're 30 plus, half the guys in the clubhouse anyway.
I forgot that Harrison was over there.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. I had another question I wanted to ask you now. I just totally forgot. That's great. What a great podcaster I am.
Great job, Trev. We're like 5 minutes in.
Say hi.
Tip of the iceberg on this one, Trev. That's tough, man.
Gosh. Someone else go. I'm an idiot.
I'll go. Let's get into you, Neil. Sorry about my friend Trevor there. I want to jump back, and we'll save some of the Yankee stuff for later, because me and JOMBOY, we fell deep into that world, and we wasn't lying at the start of this that we became endeared to you on the Yankees. So we'll maybe save that segment for the end. But something that did kind of show on the Yankees, or at least to us, because, we kind of know Neil Walker as the, kind of slugging second baseman. You got a silver slugger. You were raking for years in Pittsburgh. But, man, you and we talked about this with kind of Trevor, he had added some versatility to him.
Yep.
I want to talk about you, because, I go back and I see, you played a little third at the start, but with the Yankees, they started throwing you everywhere. And now, is that something you took pride in, or is that something like, yeah, coach, I'll go play right field? Or did you let them know when you came in you're willing to do whatever? Or how does that play out for you?
Well, Trev and I kind of had somewhat similar career trajectories per se, outside of me kind of starting as a catcher and coming up. But it didn't really get to me until my second year with the Mets, when I was 1 year away from free agency, or a half season, I should say, and I got traded. We struggled with the Mets in 2017, and I got to midseason, and we had a bunch of guys on expiring contracts. Me, Jay Bruce, Lucas Duda. We all kind of played similar positions too, and I was strictly playing second base my entire career up until that point. And all of a sudden, they basically were like, "Hey, we're probably gonna try to move some of you guys at about the All-Star break, because DeGrom got banged up a little bit, Syndergaard got hurt a little bit, Matz got hurt. There were a bunch of guys hurt, and we started falling behind the Nationals, and I think the Braves were surging ahead that year too. And in my brain, I was like, this could be the new norm for me. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it might be. And so they started throwing me at first and third, and just kind of showcasing me for some of the scouts that were in the stands right before the trade deadline. And obviously, I ended up getting traded to the Brewers, and I went over there, and they were in a playoff hunt, and we just missed the playoffs by one game. But I pretty much played first base and a little bit of second and a little bit of third, so mostly first base. So going into that following year, before I got picked up by the Yankees, I was like, you know what? Maybe my days as a strictly a second baseman are gone, but I think that I can still be an asset defensively. If I can play second, outside of really playing shortstop, I can play anywhere else in the infield. I need to make sure I maximize what I'm trying to accomplish here. So when I went into the offseason, I made sure that I got a lot of work at third, a lot of work at first, and still some work at second, and even went and bounced in the outfield a little bit just to kind of see some angles and do some stuff like that. And then I didn't get picked up till late with the Yankees. I got picked up like the second week of March. Went into spring training, and they were like, "Hey, look, I know you only got a couple weeks to get ready for the season. You're gonna be bouncing between second, third, and first. But if you're not ready for when the season starts, essentially, you can probably stay down here and get some at bats and basically go on the phantom DL." And all of a sudden, Greg Bird gets banged up at the end of spring training. They're like, "Oh, by the way, you're going to have to take your 15 to 20 at bats in spring training and be our opening day first baseman." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll go grind." And no joke, literally, it was the worst month and a half of baseball I've ever played. And they were, every time I walked into the plate come late April in New York, it was like, who the heck is this guy? Get him the heck out of here. I mean, it was bad. And but you know what, to answer your question, like I did accept it. I was like, you know what, this is kind of the trajectory this game is going. If I'm gonna, my goal at that point was to get to 10 years and to see if my body held up and so on and so forth. But I was open to it. And then that same year, Aaron Judge got hurt, Hicks got hurt, Gardy was banged up a little bit, and they were like, "Hey, bro, can you go play right field at Yankee Stadium?"
Oh my goodness!
I was like, hold on. I was like, all right, I haven't played outfield. I played like 10 innings of outfield in AAA before I got called to the big leagues in 2010. And literally the first inning, I went out to right field. They said, "Hey, don't worry about it. Put your heels on the warning track at Yankee Stadium right field, because if the ball's over your head, it's a homer." And I go out there, and it didn't take 3 pitches into the inning, and I got Joe Schmo in the right field bleachers going, "Hey, what the hell are you doing out here? Get in the infield." And so I stood out there absolutely fearing for my life for about 3 weeks until somebody came back and saved me. But that was a silver lining, because that was my ticket to get on the field. That was a rough year for me, but it finished well, and I knew from that point on that I was going to have to bounce around, and that was kind of going to be what the rest of my career looked like. And that's pretty much what it's looked like to this point.
I mean, you robbed a home run. You only played like 18 games in right field.
Wow.
And you robbed a home run in like your first – it was like the first
That's
3,
true.
I think.
That's true. It wasn't graceful, but I did rob it, yeah.
I was going to say, what did it look like?
there.
Was it like, did you pimp it or?
No. It was one of those where you kind of like partially stick your hand out and you're like, "Oh, I'm about to crush myself on the wall. Let me just stick my hand up and hope I catch this thing." And it happened to go in the glove.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to check that highlight out. I'm sure I saw it, but I got to go back.
I love that you said how the Mets told you we're probably going to trade you, and they showcased you a little bit. I'm looking at your defensive game log, and it's hilarious knowing that, because the last 5 games you played with the Mets, second base, first base, second base, then 2 games in a row at third base, and then second base, first base, and then you get traded, and the Brewers put you at third base right away. So I guess you did pretty good in your showcase. You just crushed new positions.
Well, what's funny is the day that I got traded to the Brewers, we were in Philadelphia and Milwaukee was playing at home, and obviously, like I said, they were in a playoff hunt, so they had Travis Shaw was banged up, and I had to go back to Manhattan to my apartment and get some of my stuff because we were on the road. And Craig Counsell called me at like 11 o'clock at night after their game, and he's like, "Hey man, you think you can get here tomorrow? We got a day game because it was a Saturday going into a Sunday." And I was like, "Yeah, it looks like my flight's at 9 o'clock, and I'll probably be there at 11:30, noon. I should be ready by about the 8th inning." He's like, "Oh, by the way, Travis Shaw's banged up. We need you to start at third." And I was like, "Holy shit! Oh man, this is not going to be good." And I was just literally coming off a hamstring injury, and I was probably playing at about 75% at that point. And I remember getting back to my apartment at about 11 o'clock at night, packing my entire Manhattan apartment up, and grabbing like 2 bags and getting on a plane early the next morning, landing, going straight to the ballpark, getting there at 11:30, seeing a couple doctors and being like, "Okay, you're good, sign this, sign that, here's your uniform." And no joke, by the time I buttoned up my shirt, it was like 12:45 for a 105 game. And I'm like running out of the field. So,
In the middle of a playoff race too.
In the middle of
I love
playoff
that.
race, in the middle of August, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're gonna do. So.
Yeah, it's very difficult to start to switch positions like that, even at first base, which is stereotypically like, you know, put the big fat guy at first base and let him, you know, play over there. But when you get into a big league game at first base, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
Like you have to pay attention all the damn time. I remember when I first started going over there, it's like I had to remember to go cover the base.
Yeah.
Like ground ball at second base, third base, or shortstop, if it's hit to somebody else, you're like, all right, cool. But
Right.
at first base, you're like, and the way they position you now as a first baseman, they want you off the line as far as you can get,
Right.
so you can still get, but you still have to get to the bag. So it's like first base is not like the lug of a position that it used to be, because of the way they're positioning guys now. You have to be able to cover some ground and get back there, man. So
right, and between that and like knowing how far you can go with your second baseman, but then you know you're covering first base and you got like Freddie Freeman up with a man on first, and you know he's trying to just bash a ball through the hole, and you're oh no, what am I?
Bunt plays, like
into?
everything comes into play when you're a first base, man. You got to be the cutoff to home now. So there's so many little details at first base that I don't think a lot of people realize, and so it's
when you guys first go over there, are like runners trying to talk to you? You're like, yo, I'm new here. Like, please shut up.
Yeah, please stop.
I'm really trying to concentrate.
Oh man.
Yeah,
you do have to concentrate.
I mean, you do, yeah. But you know the guys that are going to come over there and be the chatty Cathys. You know the guys that are going to be smug. So, you know, you like to give it to him a little bit when you see the guy have the 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, and then he gets a walk in his last at bat, and he's smug walking down to first base, and you're like, hey man, your swing looks great. Stay right there. Stay right there,
baby. Well, I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about before we started taping. You and I go way, way, way back.
Yep.
And we'll go back to this beautiful summer of 2004. We are both high school seniors. We're both getting looked at for the draft, blah, blah, blah. I get a phone call from an area scout and says, hey, the Pittsburgh Pirates want to see you. I'm like, okay. They're like, in Pittsburgh. So I'm like, I'm 17. My dad's like, I guess we got to fly to Pittsburgh, right? This is like the day of my high school graduation. I end up missing that, whatever. But we go and we show up to PNC Park. And I didn't know this ahead of time. I don't know what they told you, and I'll let you talk about it. But I show up to the park, and it's just me and you.
Yeah.
And essentially it was like a battle to the death who's going to be the 11th pick in the 2004 draft. Local boy Neil Walker or West Coaster T. Plouffe. And we had this awesome day. I'll never forget it.
Yeah,
like you and I were like buddies. Like we're just chumming it up. Like, isn't this cool? Like we're on this big league field. And it's such a funny thing to look back now, because obviously they ended up picking you. They made the right decision. You've had an unbelievable career, especially in Pittsburgh. But there's one detail that I love sharing with people about the story, and it is I see you come up to hit batting practice. You walk out, and this, you don't use wood bats a lot. At least I didn't up until then. But you have to wear batting gloves with wood bats. At least I had to. You walk up, and I see something on your hand. I'm like, what are you wearing? It's a leather gardening glove, and you only have one on. And that was your batting gloves. Can you tell? Like, what was that about? Was that like, did you always do that, or
that was intimidation, Trev?
Yeah. That was me
insane.
saying, hey, West Coast homeboy, you're on my turf now.
I just need everyone to picture this, dude. Like, you came out of the dugout with one gardening glove on to hit batting practice.
No, you know what the truth was? Is I blew out a couple pairs of batting gloves. You know how it was in high school. You had a couple pairs of batting gloves, and I remember being like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do? I got gigantic holes in these batting gloves." And I'm looking around, and I'm like, "These might suffice. I can wrap these around my wrist."
Oh my gosh.
But
that's really funny, man.
Like we were talking about, though, no joke. If somebody could be a fly on the wall during that day, it was unbelievable. Like, so you and the West Coast scouts were essentially patrolling the first base corridor.
Yeah.
And me and the East Coast scouts were patrolling the third base corridor. And then like the GM and the assistant GM and the cross checkers were like right behind the batting cage, and they bring in a guy to pitch to us. We take BP, we take ground balls. I throw to you at second from the catcher's position, and then we take some live BP. And every time somebody would leave the cage, you go back, and it would be like like you went after a boxing match. Somebody was like rubbing our shoulders, like, "Hey man, nice job. Hey, keep going." You know what I mean? And what are you gonna do? We're 17 years old, 18 years old at that time, and we're out there just like, what is going on here? These grown men are telling us, making sitting there just judging us to the nth degree, and we're just out there trying to have fun. Fortunately, between you and I, we've always had a great relationship, but that was when it kind of blossomed, because it was, if we didn't like each other, that would have been a miserable day.
We had a lot of fun. Now that I think back on it, like, I'm nervous for myself thinking back on it, but at the time I wasn't nervous at all. We were just kind of having a good time playing baseball.
Right.
And these guys, like you said, were like checking us out, grading us, doing whatever they do.
Right.
And it's just you and I, two little idiots on the field, just like, this is awesome. We're playing on a big league park. Like, who cares where we get drafted?
Right.
Do you think you were lighter, Neil, or more tense because it was your hometown team? Like, were you more like, I want these guys to draft me?
Oh, man.
Or was it, hey, this is my neighborhood, I'm at ease?
You know what? That's a good question. I've never really thought about that. Like, I never really felt like super added pressure with before I got drafted, or when I got drafted, or even being with the organization. I always just wanted to play. Like, I always just wanted to play in the big leagues. I wanted to play pro ball, and it was just kind of a Cinderella story where I ended up getting drafted, and obviously by the Pirates and the hometown team. But when we started to really get good in 2012, 13, 14, 15, I would feel some of that. I was just more in tune with what the community, because Pittsburgh is obviously a much smaller demographic than, where Trev's from in California, and you guys are in New York or in California, wherever you guys are at. But you hear everything in a community like Pittsburgh. So when we were horrible, people would be like, "Yeah, you guys are horrible," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're probably right." And when we were good, people were backing us, and it was amazing. But I think I felt it more on both ends of the spectrum throughout my career as a Pittsburgh Pirate. And even when I went to New York, when I first went to the Mets, it was a way bigger demographic, obviously, but I almost felt like I could hide there, because I no longer, nobody knew who the heck I was in New York. So I got traded, and it was like, oh, go play second and play well, and hopefully you guys will make the playoffs, and so on and so forth. But in Pittsburgh, I was very, people, the professional athletes in Pittsburgh are much more kind of noticed. The Sidney Crosbys, the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Andrew McCutcheon, kind of all those guys. You kind of get noticed a little bit more than you would so in New York or LA or Miami and some of these places.
I got to go back to the draft story a little bit, because Trevor told us that at spring training, and like half believed it, half didn't. So I'm glad you confirmed it. A. B, and this is the weird question that jumped to my head. When was the next time you guys saw each other? Because, yeah, there's something fun about a draft preview and two guys showing out. But, I mean, I know Trevor's got a little angst in there. Like, do you guys see each other at, like, high A ball? And Trevor's like, damn, that's the dude that they took him and not me. Like, do you guys know when the next time you linked up was?
Well, that year...
Trevor's like, I didn't even like Pittsburgh. I didn't want to go.
I didn't want to be drafted 9 spots higher.
Well... I know for a fact that when I got drafted, I went to the Gulf Coast League, and I know, didn't you go to a different rookie level league?
Yeah, I skipped that one.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
looking now. My bad. I went to the
What was it,
Appalachian League, but I'm looking now.
Appalachian,
It was 2007. It was
Yep,
Double A. Yeah.
Yep.
Altoona,
You were
and I
in
was in
New Britain Rockcats. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
because that year you were drafted that year by Minnesota, and I think Swarzak was also drafted that same year, and he's a teammate of mine now. And I believe there was somebody else either in the second round or right around that time that played for a while too. Am I right?
Well, Perkins.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
Right. But he was a college draft guy, I think. So
yeah, he was in the big leagues
quick.
pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Swarzak, man. I was talking to him the other day. This is probably not a good like story for the podcast, but I don't care. If anybody go check out Anthony Swarzak's Instagram, he's throwing these bullpens in this cage that's like got graffiti everywhere, and I told him it looks like he's in like the hangout of the Foot Clan and Ninja Turtles.
He's in Wynwood. He's in Wynwood in Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy, man. But yeah, I love Swarzak. But yeah, we hung out again in 2007. So 3 years goes by. Then we linked up again. And then obviously throughout the big leagues, we played against each other a couple times. So
yeah, we
missed
always
followed Neil.
Yeah, between AA and AAA, and obviously we didn't play a ton of each other in the big leagues just because of being in separate leagues. But you know, there were a lot of guys. There were a lot of that year we were drafted. There were a lot of guys that you and I had played with, in the showcases and whatnot. The Matt Bushes of the world and Homer Baileys and a lot of these guys that are some of these guys that are still around. So we had a pretty decent draft class. Guys that had really good careers.
Absolutely.
You got Verlander in that draft class too.
That's right. Yep.
Verlander,
Okay.
Weaver was there.
Billy
Dustin
Butler,
Pedroia,
Steven Drew.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Imagine taking me in front of Dustin Pedroia. Way to go, Twins. I always think about stuff like that.
I would have done the same thing, bro. I would have done the same thing.
Oh, man. Hey,
look at this.
I got a
hold
question.
on. I have the draft thing. It says Neil Walker, solid frame, strong as a bull, excellent physical makeup.
That's
Trevor
not true.
Plouffe, it says
Full denial.
lean, wiry, well-proportioned body, square shoulders.
Did it say anything about his
Why
hair?
did they need this shit? Why do they need this?
Weird.
Did it say anything about his flow, his hair, his lettuce?
Yeah.
That's helped me a lot through my career, no doubt. One of my biggest assets. Hey, I want to ask you about the universal DH, because we just kind of are finding out that that's probably going to be part of this proposal. Is that something that you think helps you? I mean, I think I know the answer, but as far as like the Phillies roster, how it's going to be constructed, do you think it helps that there is going to be a DH, or because of your defensive I don't even know what the word I'm looking for
prowess.
is. Diversity.
Sure.
Do you think you'd be better off without the DH?
Well, coming up as a guy that's played 10 years, 10 seasons in the NL and 1 season in the AL, the only thing that I found that was difficult was, well, number one, when I went to the Yankees and I wasn't an everyday player, I found that there were times that, especially, I faced more righty pitchers in my career than lefties. There were times with the DH, with the Yankees, obviously, that if a right-hander started and I didn't start, the chance of me getting in the game was like 0.5%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, so, these last couple years, or really this last year with Miami, if a lefty was starting and a lefty pitcher was starting and I wasn't starting the game, the chance of me getting in the game as soon as that guy came out were like 90%. You know what I mean? So there were times there's times as a non-everyday player, or I should say most of the time as a non-everyday player in the NL, there's a good chance you're going to find a way in that game, whether it's defensive replacement in the 8th inning or one at bat for the pitcher in the 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever the case may be. That volume of being involved, I found, was very helpful as an extra, as a quote unquote extra guy. Whereas in the American League, there were days that I would go, or there were weeks that I would go 3, 4, 5 days without even stepping in the batter's box. And when you come back, it's tough. As you know, like it'll take 3, 4, 5 at bats just to get your feet back underneath you. So I think that for our roster, I think it helps, because I think that there's guys like McCutchen that are going to have, that are coming off an ACL injury. There's going to be guys like Bryce that need a blow, and you don't necessarily want to give him the whole day off so you can let him DH. Reese Hoskins, he ran out of gas a little bit at the end of last year. He's going to be able to do that. So between guys like, I think myself and Logan Forsythe and Josh Harrison, these guys that can kind of play multiple positions, I think that does help us. But on the opposite end, like I said, there's going to be times where, guys like myself and guys like Josh and guys like Logan we may not get at bats for 3, 4, 5 days, and that's just the nature of the beast. So I'm kind of for it, and I'm kind of not for it. But fortunately, at this point in my career, I've dabbled in both, so I kind of know what I need to do to stay somewhat prepared. But it'll be interesting. I think it's going to inject a lot more offense into the league, and this sprint. Yeah. If this thing goes the way we think it's going to go, this sprint to the finish line is going to be pretty fun.
I was completely the opposite of your career. I mean, I spent most of my time in the AL, and then towards the end of my career, I spent some time with the Phillies in the NL. And the anxiety I felt as a bench player, I never felt that before, man. In the AL, if you're not playing, you're not playing. Right. You sit there, you try to pick a pitcher apart, you try to do something, but you know you're spitting seeds most of the game. The NL, it's like, bro, you got 3 innings to chill out.
Right.
And then after that, it's like go time, and it's like you kind of have an idea where you might come in, but it could happen at any point.
Right.
You could double switch the pitcher out, whatever. And I did not do well with that, man. I wasn't used to it. So I love that you have that experience. And I think now with the DH, I think you're going to just benefit so much from it. So
yeah, I think so.
I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing about baseball is just like, you know, you got 2 leagues with 2 separate rules, and like you and I are talking about, that's the exact way I felt in the AL. Was like, okay, I didn't start today. Let me take
a sandwich, bro.
Yeah, let me take care of my body and just relax and watch this game. Where in the NL, it's like, oh crap, our pitcher's in the 4th inning and he's got 75 pitches. Like, and next inning it's 7, 8, 9 coming up. There's a good chance that I'm going to be up, and like, oh, I haven't gone and taken any swings yet today. That anxiety, I totally 100% get it. But when you've been kind of trained along those paths, you don't really consider when you have a day off in the NL, you don't really have a day off unless you're the backup catcher. Like that's it. That's just the way it is.
Speaking of that, are you like a third catcher like at all times? Have you always been that like on the team?
Yeah.
Like, do you have gear every year?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
That's awesome.
So
and never in the big leagues, right?
No. Yeah, I never caught. So 2010, I didn't make the team out of spring training, and I was playing mostly third. And that year, they were like, "Hey, if you're going to make this team, you got to be bouncing around." So I literally was in AAA, Indianapolis, in April, playing left field and first base. And I'll never forget this. The first series of the year, we were in Columbus, Ohio, and the very first game, one of our catchers, we had 2 catchers. One was Eric Kratz, who's obviously still around, and the other guy, I can't remember his name, but the other guy took a ball off his toe and thought he broke his toe the very first game. The second game, they said, "Hey, Walk, you're not allowed to play today because we don't have an extra catcher, and if something happens to Kratz, you're going to have to go in the game. So you're going to sit today, and you're going to go catch every reliever that's coming into this game." And it was 40 degrees outside in Columbus, Ohio, the second game of the season, and I literally was like, I think that I should probably quit because this is literally the worst thing I could ever imagine. And fortunately, that fizzled out, and I ended up having a really good April and May of that year, and that shot me up into the big leagues. But man, oh man, that was I've never been so happy to not put the catcher's gear on. But I have been the third catcher pretty much every single year. But luckily,
brings
I haven't
value,
had to tap
man.
into it. It does. But I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to like take that off your resume as you keep going? Like, all right, please stop. Someone else sign up. Like that should be a young guy's position.
Yeah, right. And for the most part, they take inventory in spring training, and they're like, "Well, what can you do?" And I'll be like, I can play first, second, third, right, left. And then I'll be like, catcher, and they'll be like, what was that? Oh, you can catch. Oh, okay. Well, we'll get you some gear. Don't worry. Every couple of weeks, make sure you catch a bullpen. And I'm like, oh, get the hell out of here. I don't want anything to do with this.
So funny, man.
Oh, I want to go back to some of those Pittsburgh teams because those were really good teams. I mean, I think people overlook those a little bit. I mean, McCutchen got one MVP, so he kind of became a star of the league. But I mean, that's a dude who you mentioned some of the different markets. I think if McCutchen was a Dodger or Yankee or some of those other teams, I mean, he would be. household. And luckily, social media, he is becoming household.
Right.
But I want to hear a little bit about, a couple of those teams, maybe 2013 or what don't people know? Because, I mean, McCutchen, yeah, he was a stud. But, I'm looking at some of those pitching staffs, and those are silly. It's Burnett, Liriano, Cole, Morton. Those teams were awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, that. So I got to the big leagues in 2010 and kind of got established later on in the 2011 season. I felt like I finally was like, okay, I'm here. And Andrew was up there a half a season before me in 2009. And then fast forward a little further, Charlie Morton was up there, but he was still kind of struggling to get his footing and consistency as a big league starter. We had guys like Starling Marte that came along, I think, later in the 2012 season. We had a really good first half of the 2012 season and fizzled out in April, in August and September. And we knew going into that offseason, we were like, hey, we got a pretty good squad here. Like we got some good players. And they did a really good job that year of bringing in Russell Martin and Liriano and AJ Burnett and these guys that were veteran guys. And they had kind of meddled a little bit the last couple years, but it was a perfect market for those guys to come in. I think AJ was coming from New York or Philadelphia or somewhere like that. Frankie struggled a little bit. I think he was with the White Sox maybe and just kind of struggled in the AL. Came over and these guys just were really good. Everybody was healthy. It was like the perfect storm. And we got to about late May in 2013, and we kind of looked around and we were like, hey, we're legit. Like we got a chance at this. And we were staring down the barrel of the Cardinals, and Cincinnati was still really competitive. Chicago was kind of up and coming at that time. Milwaukee was on the downswing for that year. And we were just good. And we didn't have, like you said, we didn't have big name guys. Andrew was clearly our best player. Everything was built around him. Our pitching staff was steady. Garrett got up there mid-season. Garrett Cole got up there mid-season, and he just jumped right into the rotation basically as our number 2 guy. And we were one game. We lost the game. We lost the 5th game of the division series against the Cardinals in St. Louis. Carlos Beltran had a huge 3-run homer in like the 6th inning to completely separate the game. But there was not many guys on our team that had a lot of postseason experience, and that kind of catapulted us through the next couple of years. And people that know that 14 and 15 year, we ran into a complete buzzsaw after that with Jake Arrieta and Madison Bumgarner in the wild card games. Yeah. But we were just as good in 14 and 15 as we were in 13. We just kind of fell victim to the wild card game, and in 13 we were beneficiaries of the wild card game. So that's kind of baseball. I mean, think about this last year. The Milwaukee Brewers had the wild card game won. They had it won. And the Washington Nationals ended up winning the World Series. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that 15 season, you guys won 98 games.
Yeah.
Damn.
And we still had to play. We almost had to play on the road for a wild card game. That's insane. Absolutely
Fans
insane.
love it. Fans, as a fan, I love watching a one-game thing. But as a player, and I never got to experience that, but to play 162 games, win 98 of them, and then have your entire postseason balance on one
9
game.
innings.
And baseball, a pitcher can dominate for one game, and you have no chance. And that's kind of what happened 2 years in a row. Now that I'm talking it out loud, I don't like the wild card game. So I'm gonna have to call Rob.
We might need to look this up, but I believe I'm the leader in the clubhouse for most wild card games played. I think I have.
Really?
So I've been a part of 5. The first year with the Mets, I got hurt at the end of the year. So 3 with the Pirates, 1 with the Mets, and then 1 with the Yankees. And I have a 3-2 or a 2-3 record, and but like
they've only been around for 8 years.
Yeah. So if you want me to be a part of a wild card game, just bring me on your squad, I guess.
Was that so? What's the furthest you went in a postseason?
So we got 2013, very first year. 2013 and then 2018 with the Yankees. We got the game 5 of the division series against the Cardinals in 13, and then we got the game 4 against the Red Sox in 18. So, both.
What was more nerve-wracking? Like, was the buzz, the excitement, the nervous energy more in the NLDS than it was in the wild card game, or was that or like how just tell us how the wild card game is as a player? Like,
it like you said, it sucks. Like it sucks. The very first wild card game, Johnny Cueto, we faced Johnny Cueto in the Reds, and we got up early, and Liriano just shoved right. The next year we had Madison Bumgarner. He came into Pittsburgh, and Brandon Crawford hit a grand slam in like the 6th inning, and Bumgarner threw basically a shutout. We were toast. No shot. The next year, Arrieta was unhittable the entire year. Was NL Cy Young. Came into Pittsburgh and shoved it. The following year, I was with the Mets and didn't play, but Madison Bumgarner pitched, did the same thing, shoved
Same
it
guy.
for 9 innings, and it was still tied. We went to an extra inning, and somebody hit I think somebody for them hit a Connor Gillespie.
Yeah,
hit a
that was the
homer.
Syndergaard game, right?
Yeah.
We just rewatched that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he shoved it, and Bumgarner shoved it, and somebody hit a 3-run homer in like the top of the 10th inning, something like that, and we lost. And then 2 years later with the Yankees, we played the Oakland Athletics, and Severino pitched an absolute gem. Judge hit a big homer early in the game to give us a cushion, and I think we ended up winning like 6-2 or 6-3 or something like that. So, but there's like it's out the window. The script is completely out the window. It's not like, okay, well, we got Severino throwing game 1 and Tanaka throwing game 2, and we got it set up to go on the road. It's like, all right, all hands on deck. Like all of our starters in the bullpen. Something happens in the first 2 innings. We're going to go to the number 2 starter and hope that he can get through 2 innings. And that's really the way it's been. Most every single game, it's either been somebody got a huge hit or a huge homer to kind of extend the game and give a cushion, or a pitcher has shoved it. So that's the name of the wild card.
Trev,
I can't even imagine, bro.
Trev, in a kind of serious note, and the first half of this question, you think I'm D-bagging you, but you've mentioned a few times that your Twins teams weren't always the most successful. When you do hear that like a 98-win Pittsburgh team goes in and is in that 1-game wild card buzzsaw, do you honestly take a step back and like, hey, maybe we need to rethink this because that's kind of fucked?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I get it because fans love it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to expand it.
It is like you open up the playoffs with a bang. Like if you when you open up game 1 of a 5-game set, or not everyone's like calling their relatives, you got to watch this. Like I remember in 16 when it was Cubs or I forget who it was, but it was like my sister, I was like, watch this. Like this is intense. So it is like everyone crowds around, casual fans. So I from a fan perspective, it's great, but I don't think you want to be a fan of a team in it. I hated watching the Yankees. You wake up sick. Like, holy shit.
I love seeing all the starting pitchers march their way down to the bullpen. They have no idea what to do in the bullpen. They're just sitting there like, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
How do I get warmed up again? Everything is completely different in those games. And like I said, I mean, thinking about playing 162 games and winning 98 of them and then having your entire season hang on 1 game sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
But here I am, jonesing for a 1-game playoff. I can't wait to see that this year because I don't care anymore. I'm a fan, and I get to just watch you guys sweat it out.
When the first batter of the game walks and then Judge takes the opener deep, it's a nice feeling.
Yeah, you want to be on that side, no doubt about that.
Yeah. That was like, there's a video of me watching that, and I'm just like such a little kid, like relief. Like I'm not even excited. I'm just relieved because I've been a ball of stress all day. It's like, oh, thank you.
I need a team to root for. I need to feel
You're
that.
a Dodgers fan.
I don't want to be a Dodgers fan.
Twins seem like a layup.
Yeah. I root for them. I do.
Okay.
How about this? And I was going to spin this before we do land in Yankee World because it was a good segue, but I didn't want it. Give us a little more on what you saw in the Phillies because we actually talked to Hoskins right at the beginning of all this Corona stuff. And I know, you got a month of spring training, 4 weeks of spring training, but what should we be looking for on this Phillies team? Because I mean, Harper, Hoskins, McCutchen, like those guys obviously pop out. What should we be looking for? And maybe sell Trevor Plouffe on rooting for your Phillies this year.
Okay.
It's when you look on paper at what, especially the offensive side of it, it's deep. Like it's deep.
Yes.
You got you don't know where Didi Gregorius is going to hit. Well, I hate to tell you, but Didi Gregorius hit in the middle of the Yankees lineup successfully for about 6 years, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the lineup and you're going, well, do you put him in front of, do you double up lefties with him and Bryce? Do you sandwich Real Muto between him and hit Didi fifth or sixth? Do you put McCutchen at 1 or 2, or do you put him at 6 or 7? Do you put Hoskins in the middle of the order? Do you move him down? It's when I was looking at that in spring training, I was like, wow, this is a really good team. And I played in the NL East with the Marlins last year, obviously with the Mets 2 years before that. So I've seen kind of where the trajectory this offense especially is going and has come from. And it's not an easy, you'll peg some lineups and be like, wow, this is going to be a tough lineup to get through 4 times in a night. And then multiply that by a 3 or 4 game series. Like if we could sneak one out of here, we're feeling pretty happy. But, I think at the end of the day, it becomes, how does the pitching staff hold up? How do the relievers hold up? And I have all the faith in the world and guys. And, you hate to see the Sir Anthony Dominguez's have to go under the knife because they had such high expectations for him. And, Zach Wheeler is a sneaky, ace that I think that is going to have a monster year that nobody really kind of, talks a whole lot about. And I think Jake is healthy this season. So there's a lot of really solid pieces on this team that I think if we stay healthy and guys play just to their norm, that there's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't win this division. So, and you look at the NL East, it's arguably one of the best divisions in baseball.
Stacked.
It's, you know what I mean? And you can say arguably that some teams took a step back and, the Marlins are the Marlins and maybe Nationals aren't going to be the Nationals. But at the same time, you look at all these pitching staffs. It's unbelievable. You go into when you go into New York to face the Mets, you're like, oh great, okay, I got, the last couple of years you got Wheeler, Syndergaard, and DeGrom, and you're literally thinking to yourself, how am I going to get a hit the next 3 days? Can I please go 1 for 3 with a walk somehow one of these next 3 nights? And obviously we stole Wheeler from those guys, but it's a tough division. So you're going to have, if we're lucky enough to start, and if it's 60 game, 70 game, whatever the season may be, like you're going to have to be good. You're going to have to be really good for 70 games. And if it bumps up to 16, 14, 16 teams, whatever it's going to be in the playoffs, that's going to help. But pitching is going to be the name of the game, in my opinion.
Are you a fan of the 16 teams getting in?
I think there is, like you were saying, I think there's something to be said for playing so well over the course of 162 games and being rewarded. And if you're, the top 3 teams, if you win your division, you basically get a bye basically into the division series. I can't say that I love the 16 team playoff scenario. I think that it gives more teams an opportunity. But at the same time, there was 16 teams packing it in before the season even started. Let's be honest.
Yeah. 16 teams is a ton. It's obviously it's over 50% of the league is going to be in the playoffs. I don't love it. When I was playing, I would have loved it because I would have had a chance to play in the postseason. Yeah. So guys, I think around the league are probably like, all right, everybody wants to go in the postseason. So It's not such a bad thing. But then when you kind of take a step back, you're like, man, over half the league's going to be in. And really the baseball playoffs, if more than any other sport, it's all about timing and getting hot at the end of the season. So if you're that 15, 16th team in, but you get hot, who knows what's going to happen, man?
Yeah. That's why I don't like it, because baseball is a sport where anything can happen. And I think some people if a wild card team who had just over 500 season and somehow sneaks in, does get hot and does damage, people are going to use that as see, we let him in,
yeah.
but it's like, but that's not the point.
Right.
That the point is we don't want that because baseball so easily has parity already.
Right.
That let the good teams sort it out.
and think
or the
about-
teams have earned it a little bit.
Think about the NHL and the NBA every year. I mean, the 1 versus 16 or the 1 versus 8 seeds. I mean, how often do you see that those teams get clipped? I mean, it never happens. And
never happens.
And to your point, like, it's much more likely to happen in baseball, especially if it's a 3-game series, than it is in any other sport. And and then all of a sudden you're the number 1 seed and you win 106 games like the Red Sox did a couple years ago, and you got to go play the under 500 Baltimore Orioles, and they go have 2 of the best games in that they've had all year, and they clip the best team in the league. I mean, obviously that's
Well, let's leave the Baltimore Orioles out of this, okay, Neil?
The under 500 Orioles was the nicest thing the Orioles have had said about them in a long time. That was so well phrased.
Maybe
And
not the Orioles.
I just for any baseball fans that are feeling kind of disconnected, like they're lawyers right now, go look at the Phillies roster. You guys have 10 major league hitters ready to go. Like,
Yes.
There's guys you didn't mention. I mean, Jay Bruce, Josh Harrison, like Kinger. It's silly, man. That's silly.
Yeah, it is. It's a good team. You guys got to stay healthy for sure.
Yep.
Even like David Robertson coming back.
Yep. Tommy Hunter, David Robertson. I mean, there's guys that are coming off of injuries. Yeah, and that's going to be a gigantic piece. And we are I would say on the kind of the older side, and so that's, I mean, as you know, that's more important than anything else is going to be the depth, which I think they did a good job. I think the Phillies did a really good job of really being cognizant of bringing in depth pieces, both on the pitching side and the position player side. And now that these rosters are most likely going to be expanded to whatever 29, 30, 31, I think that's that type of foresight in their mind is really going to help.
Do you and Kutch look at each other and say, like, are we just following each other around the league right now?
Well, he lives in Pittsburgh. We're hitting together now here, so we get to
awesome.
we get to reminisce on our
It's your
days.
third team together, right?
Yeah, third team. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's funny.
That's great.
The way that the Phillies brought in veterans this year, I think is really going to help them with these expanded rosters. And I don't want to like talk crap about anybody, but they're really, and I played in the minor leagues with them in 2018. So I kind of saw what they had at the upper level minor leagues. There's really not a lot of kind of like impact guys, at least when I was there, that are ready to go. So to bring in, a bunch of kind of veteran guys that have been around the league for a long time, I think is really going to help out, especially, like I said, if you got 28, 29, 30 guys on this roster, you guys are going to be able to, and with the DH, like just interchange guys, keep everyone healthy. I think, I mean, you guys are really set up nice to do some damage in this kind of strange type of season that we're probably going to end up having.
Well, when you think about like what the schedule could potentially look like, and there's probably going to be scenarios where you get rained out a couple times a week, and all of a sudden you're playing 20 games in a row. Well, you're going to be able to kind of trudge through those days with a 30-man roster, but at the same time, like you're saying, you're not having to throw the 3 guys that are AAA guys out there on the back end of a doubleheader, or 4 games in 3 days to kind of just fill in and hope that they go out there and play well. You're going to have bona fide big leaguers that are able to step in and help. So I think that's going to be a strong point for us if this thing kicks off.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so we told Jake and I are Yankees fans. This whole company started as Talkin' Yanks, so we got to do a little Yankees talk. I want to start off.
All right, see you guys later.
See you, Trev. See you, Trev. I got to start off with your first Yankees-Red Sox series was a pretty wild one.
Oh, yeah.
With the brawl in Fenway.
Yeah.
And all those big bodies throwing each other around, CC, Judge, Giancarlo, Tyler Austin. I mean, it was huge. Do you have any fun memories that maybe like happened, post-brawl in the clubhouse or pre or during or anything?
You know what? So it's funny. The very first series that we played against the Red Sox was the very first time that I played. That was my last stadium that I needed to hit. Was at Fenway Park. So the 30th ballpark I needed to hit. So I'm going up there and I'm like, I just crossed off my baseball bucket list. I just hit my last place. What better place than Fenway Park? I get up for my first at bat and I'm standing on deck, and I'm not kidding you. Like a 75-year-old lady is just telling me how horseshit I am, and and that I need to go back to the NL, and I got no business being in the Red Sox Yankees rivalry. And I was like, okay, cool. This is how it's gonna be.
Here we are.
And
that sounds like Fenway.
And fast forward to, I think it might have been the second game of the first series at Fenway Park, and Tyler Austin just gets absolutely drilled, and he goes out there, and Joe Kelly drills him with 98 in the back, and he runs out there, and I'm like, oh, here we go, right? And I'm running out there, and the first thing I thought of was like, I need to grab the smallest guy that I can find. Where's the smallest guy? Jackie Bradley. There he is. Let me grab Jackie. I grab Jackie, and I'm like, don't move. All of a sudden, I see Joe Kelly's glasses on the ground, and I said, I'm gonna take these glasses. I pick up these glasses, and they're busted. They're broken in half. He's got one lens completely popped out. I fire him back into the back of the crowd. So I need nothing to do. I got pearly whites here. I got decent bone structure. I didn't want anything to do with catching a left hook from anybody in that bullpen. I let Judge and Aroldis Chapman, and Betances and these 6'8" gargantuans come out of the bullpen and just kind of strut their way over there. I wanted nothing to do with that. But needless to say, whether you're on the front line or the back line of a soft brawl or a big brawl in Major League Baseball, there's nothing more exciting than being in that scrum. And it's just a matter of it's a stick your
And
neck
they have
out.
Red Sox Yankees too. Like, that's awesome, man. At Fenway, you're brawling against the rival. Like that, there's nothing better than that. That's awesome.
April, early.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's set the tone. Yeah, it's set the tone for sure.
It was brewing. What I mean, how, when you look back at New York, because you mentioned it was kind of your first time not playing full time, and that was a big adjustment. And like you said, you got off to a slow start, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. You come late to spring training, and there you are at first base. And I went back into the numbers a little bit, and tough year from the right side. That's all I'll say. And did that just add to it? I mean, are you getting frustrated? Are you trying to be like, hey, run me out there for a couple weeks because that's what I do? Like, what was that like for you?
So it was funny because, that I knew that I wasn't prepared for the season, and it had nothing to do with like what I was doing before I got picked up by the Yankees. I think second, third week of March, and had a few weeks to get ready for the season. I was doing everything I could. I went to that camp at IMG Academy in Bradenton, so I was getting some live at bats and things like that. But it just wasn't the quality of work. Wasn't prepared. Playing that April and part of May, I kept asking. Of course, the media is going to ask you. You come over and you're a partial everyday player and you're not playing well, and you played well in your career, and they're going, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And I'm going, listen, I basically was like, I just don't feel like myself. Like I haven't got my timing down. I don't feel comfortable at the plate. I just haven't settled in yet. And literally I got to like the second week of May, and we were in Texas, and I got a couple big hits and hit a homer and just flushed the ball. And sometimes that's all it takes to get you kind of locked back in. And hit a couple balls hard there, and it was just kind of like the weight kind of just lifted off my shoulders, and I was like, you know what, I can't play stressed out. I can't play like searching. I need to just be me. And if you basically take the first month and a half away from my statistics with the Yankees, I played almost pretty much the exact same I have in my career. But when you're in a place like New York, you understand that when you're not playing up to par, you're going to be asked questions. You're going to be prodded and told that you stink. And you know that as a player, like, that, it wasn't one of these things where I was like, oh man, I've lost a step. I'm 32 years old or whatever the case may be. I was just like, dude, I just don't feel right. My timing's not right. And like you said, I was playing 3-4 days a week. I was playing most of the time when righties would pitch, wouldn't play when lefties would pitch. And I just didn't feel great. Then all of a sudden, mid-May comes around. I start to get it back, and I had a good rest of the year. So it was a good learning curve for me, because going from pretty much playing every day to not playing every day, and then learning the routine of how to prepare as a bench guy and as a non-everyday guy, it took a while to kind of get to that point. And by the end of the season, I honestly felt, even though my if you looked at like my numbers for that year, they weren't good, but I honestly felt like I learned more that year about myself and about what I needed to do to be the best version of myself than I had in any other year, because I never thought of it before. I knew that I was in the lineup every day, every other year before that year. And that year I needed to be like, okay, I need to take more early work. I need to take more early ground balls to stay prepared. I need to hit off in the batting cage in the 6th inning off a velocity machine to make sure I'm prepared if I get that one at bat that night. So, it was a hard reality to kind of, because that's kind of where I am now, as maybe not an everyday player, but a partial everyday player. But I wouldn't be, having gone through that, I was going to have to go through that mud at some point. And unfortunately, I ended up doing it at literally the biggest stage in the world as a New York Yankee. But at the end of the day, I don't regret anything of my time with the Yankees. I loved it. Those guys were great. And, outside of the buzzsaw that was the Red Sox that year, we could have had a good chance of making a deep run.
They asked you to do a lot of things that were new. Like by the end of the season or in the playoffs, you were a defensive replacement at first base, and you were basically a designated third baseman when CC pitched. And, two positions that you didn't play for a long time, and now you're the defensive replacement at those positions. You also had like 3 big ass home runs at the end of the series, like pinch hit walk-offs, 3-run bomb to turn it. I mean, it was like, it felt like you were giving us like a presence. I was like, Neil's got it. That's how it felt at the end of the season.
It really did.
Because
it really did.
It did because you had command of the zone. No. He knows it. At the end of the season, I mean, I think your pinch hit numbers that season are amazing. I think you had like a 1 OPS and ton of home runs and shit. But I remember the home runs in Texas off Bart that got you started, off Bartolo Colon. I have an odd question for you.
Here we go.
When you hear the term Disco Neil, does that mean anything to you?
I still don't know what Disco Neil is. Like, know, I wish somebody would explain to me exactly what Disco Neil. I'm all for it. Whatever nickname you want to give me, that's great. But I never got the premise of Disco Neil. So now's
a lot of people didn't. It's just
nobody
Jake's
does. Nobody does, and it's kind of everything you just said. And I'll try to define it, but we can't. Man.
Tell Trev.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so Trev, a big thing in the 2018 season was at some point, Jake does these burns. At some point, the nickname Disco Neil just stuck, and it was like on our podcast. It was just funny to us. Like it kind of didn't make any sense. It was out of left field.
I mean,
I'd make these videos every home run. I'd make a video of a song DISCO with the disco ball, and it'd be Neil running around the bases just with disco balls. We sold Disco Neil shirts. There's your face on a disco ball.
Sorry, hey.
Royalties.
Sold a ton of those.
It was just your energy, which we're all seeing now. Like you're a positive dude. You could see that on the field. And, it's kind of funny, like, tying in the numbers in your season. Like, dude, there was a couple months you raked. Like, you're saying, in New York, it wasn't my best season. Like, the month of May, you had an 890 OPS. In July, you had an 894 OPS. Like, after that start, you got going. And it's what Jimmy was saying before, and it should almost mean nothing coming from us. But you were such a professional. Like, your at-bats were professional. If you went to third base, you played like a professional. You went to right field, like you were just saying. And everything you did was a ball player. And there was just this little bit of swag to it, that it wasn't over the top. But I think that was the disco twist, that it was like, if you guys want to get funky, I'll get funky. That's kind of what it was.
I get it now.
Thank you.
That's a perfect explanation of Neil Walker. Professional with a little swag.
I'm for the boys. You know that.
Yeah, and that's amazing, dude. That's a great nickname. Now that you've explained it, because Disco Neil, if you don't explain it, doesn't make any sense.
We got calls and tweets. Not why do you guys call him that? And we were like, if we
and that's
can't,
what that's why we
you
that's
like
why
it
we
or you
knew
don't.
It was great because the people that like got me and Jimmy and kind of our weirdness, like they were like yes, but the people that kind of didn't, they were like, you're never gonna make sense of this.
Well, just so you know, that's stuck in the clubhouse. So that started to infiltrate the clubhouse. So they were wanting me to wanting me to bust the disco
that's
ball
hilarious.
out whenever I get a big hit or
That's
something.
awesome. I got a Yankee centric question for you. I'll play ball
Yes.
here. I'll go Yankees right here. I'm looking at your stats. And do you want to know the statistic that you're 4 times better than Derek Jeter?
Oh boy,
on.
here we go.
Oh no.
Grand slams. Old Neil's got 4 grand slams. Poor Derek Jeter only could muster up 1 in his entire
Is that true?
career.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're 4 times better than Derek Jeter. You heard it here first. Whatever. I'm twice as good as Derek Jeter.
Look at this.
So
304 batting average, 1.081 OPS as a pinch hitter. I had it right. You
I'll take
crushed.
that. I'll need to try to improve on that next year to keep my career going. So.
Love that.
Dude, one of us in this chat right now is taking Max Scherzer up top 3 times. It's not Jake.
Not me.
It's not BBD.
Guarantee you it's not me.
What are you doing against Scherzer that you took him up top 3 times? What are you looking for off that guy? Because nobody else can do that.
Literally
Dude.
just praying that he leaves one belt high. And typically if he does, it's got this ball flight on it that's like moving, to the north, and you just foul it off. So it's just like, okay, well, he's going to get dirty on me, especially if he gets to 2 strikes. Maybe he'll make a mistake sometime before I get to 2 strikes. And I think the times that I've got him were like 2-1 middle of the way heaters and a missed slider cutter in 0-1 that he left over the plate. But more than anything, it was just swing and pray, and I've connected with 3. So
you got some good ones here. I'm looking. Zach Greinke, you got him 4 times.
Whoa.
I think
two elite pitchers here. I'm going over all your stats. I love
were at
that.
the short porch in Milwaukee too. So I don't know if that exactly counts.
Okay.
All right.
They count.
In the book.
They all count. You're talking to Yankees fans here. They all count.
Yeah.
There's one other stat here I saw is that after leaving Pittsburgh, whenever you go back and play the Pirates, you just crush them.
Oh.
Is that just a comfort thing?
What's the
Is there
stat,
anything
Jim?
to
What
it?
you got?
There's like a revenge of the ex-player that totally exists in baseball, and you don't necessarily like. I didn't have it in my mind, like especially the first couple of years after I went back with the Mets back to Pittsburgh. Like, oh, I'm gonna bury these guys. Like I wasn't thinking that, but like you go to the ballpark and you're like, wow, this is super familiar. Like taking BP, taking ground balls, stepping in the box for your first at bat, because there's times you go play places and you're not familiar with the backdrop or the bat or the box, and you're like, oh, this is good. It takes 2 games to feel comfortable. Well, when I was in Pittsburgh, I was super comfortable, and I knew exactly how I needed to hit the ball to right field to get it over the wall. I knew exactly how to hit the ball to right center, the trajectory you needed to get that ball over the wall in right center. So that's kind of where I made my living. But I think it was just kind of one of those things where you play for a team for so long, and so many guys do it too. They come back and they kind of just somewhat torture their old team. But it's nonetheless enjoyable.
Got to. It's a 438 on base percentage. Trev 1.049 OPS against the Pirates.
They love you and they hate you.
I know how
Pittsburgh.
they pitch there. I know their philosophy. So.
Oh man,
It's good.
Damn.
Man, we've kept you for a while, so I mean you can dip if you want. The only other thing I wanted to ask about was the famous viral video with the umpire and Terry Collins and Noah Syndergaard, and you make an appearance in that. And for a while, that wasn't available to the public. Did you guys in the clubhouse ever like laugh about that, like the ass in the jackpot line, or were you too much heat of the moment to really soak it in? What was it like when you watched that back?
I don't
for the
remember.
First time?
I don't remember. I can't remember the umpire's name, but Tom Hallion, I think is who it was. I don't remember him ever saying that out there. I remember it was like late May or something, and we were playing the Dodgers in a 4-game series, and it was a Thursday through Sunday series. And on Thursday, we ran through like our entire bullpen, and so we needed Noah to go like at least 6 innings that night. And the whole talk was like Chase Utley, he took out Ruben Tejada the year before. What's he going to do? And I remember David Wright having a conversation with him and like, hey, listen, like now's not the time for this. We're scuffling. We're trying to get back into the win, like the win column. We were struggling for some of May, and Noah was basically like, all right, I got this. Like, don't worry about it. And literally, I think it was he might have been the first bat of the game. I think it was the second bat of the game. He rears back, and I'm standing behind him, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. And I just see 99 go behind his back, and I'm like, oh no, he's about to get tossed. We're about to completely blow out our bullpen again. He gets run, and we run to the diamond, and I'm like, there's nothing I can say right now that's going to get him back in this game, but I got to stand up for him somehow. And I'm like, Tom, why didn't you tell us that this is, if something happened, you got to give us a warning, And the lawyer in me is coming out, and I'm like, I'm not going to win this one, but I gotta at least give him my 2 cents. And he's like, what are you talking about? He almost just drilled him with 100 in the head. Like, even though he didn't hit him, the intent was there. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I can't.
Yeah, you're right.
you're right. And then he busts off the ass in the jackpot. And when I saw that for the first time, I literally couldn't stop laughing for like an hour. And then when you see Terry Collins dropping all sorts of cuss words at the home plate, the only reason he was mad is because he knew we were about to blow our bullpen out again for the second straight day with 2 more games to go against the Dodgers. So it was that was I've gotten more comments about that than like anything else over the course of the last 4 years of my career, which is awesome. But at the same time, when we were going through it, we were like, oh no, this is the worst thing ever.
Is that a saying?
It's an amazing clip.
Is that like a real saying, or did he just like make that up? Like ass in the jackpot?
No one heard it. No one's heard it. But
I don't know what does it mean?
He invented a
what does it
saying.
mean? I don't even know.
No idea.
I like it. I'm gonna start using it.
Yeah. I think it means like, we're on the spot here. Like, we're on the edge. Like we can't mess up, or I don't.
Jackpot.
Yeah. Got no other choice. I don't know.
It doesn't matter what it means.
Terry
It's
Collins is
awesome.
going off.
Damn.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm great. I mean, we've kept you for a while. Anything you need to plug? And anything we need to check out?
No, I don't think so. We think no more run-ins with Trev. We played some good amateur ball together.
What's your number in Philly?
12. I've always been
number. Can't wait to see number
12
out
14, 18, and 20. I've tried to stay in the 10 to 20 range if I can. So, but if I have to pay for a number, I'm not buying somebody a Rolex for their number. Right? I got diapers to buy and all sorts of stuff now. You know what I mean?
there. Yeah.
Real stuff.
Love it, man. We appreciate you coming
No,
on.
this is fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Dude.
You
Thanks,
guys
man.
are killing
Awesome.
it. I'm so happy for you guys. So
Appreciate that.
Appreciate
man.
that.
Need to see you back on the
Appreciate
field,
thank you.
dude. Soon.
Yeah, man.
Soon.
And there you have it. And Jake, what I was going to say at the top of the show that I didn't want to say is it's very cool that the nickname you made up for a player that has no basis was used in the clubhouse by his teammates. That's pretty cool to hear.
It was proven that there was perfect basis for it by that bullshit response I stumbled into. But yeah, man, and you and I, we peel back the curtains a little bit. We try almost not to do that because it sounds really douchey if we run into Yankees players and it's like, hey, did you see this? so we try not.
Do you know what we call you?
Yeah, so it's douchey not to do that. But yeah, I mean, to hear that was obviously really cool and awesome. Like, I asked him if he wanted to plug anything, and he's like, yeah, let me see if I've got old Trevor stories. And it's like, no, man, like you're
stop
good,
that.
dude. You're good. And hey, let's be honest. Well, I can speak for me and Jimmy here. We had a longer day today. We're recording late night, and I'm full with spunk right now. That was great.
Yeah, it's a good one. I knew coming in that he was going to be a good interview or just kind of a good discussion partner. I'll give him that. But like you said, he kind of brings that energy in that role that he's in now. Where he's probably not going to be an everyday player, at least to start. Maybe something happens, whatever. But that's the energy you're looking for. If you're putting together a roster, a guy that can keep you loose but be professional about it, it's Neil Walker to a T. I think Philly did a good job going out and getting him. And he's going to be a big part of the team this year. And like he said in the interview, they have a long lineup, and they are really well positioned to do well this year particularly.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, they're stacked. I don't buy the pitching as much as, we're supposed to, especially in like an arms race.
You could say that again about any team. That's what I think. It's all about the pitching. You go as far as your pitchers, and they're no different.
In a shortened season, I mean, I really do think they get a DH, and seriously, look at their bats. It's silly.
DH helps them a lot.
And like, hey, I think when we talked about the Phillies preseason, it was kind of like, hey, you need Wheeler to put it together. You need Nola to put it together. And now in a shortened season, I mean, there's no reason to like bet against those guys. And then, hey, if Arrieta figures it out, you got a playoff rotation there. So go Phils, babe.
Go Phils. All right. Thank you guys very much. I just texted you a link, Trev, to the Disco
I'm
Neil.
watching it right now. It's hilarious.
You got to listen to it, too.
Okay.
It's fucking, as soon as the ball hits the bat, it just goes D-I-S-C. Just Disco Neil. All right. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day, and we will see you later.